All right, so imagine this for me. You've got this missionary, and he gets to Ecuador, and he is just so focused on blending in, right? He's got the whole getup going, the patched pants, even like a little bit of straw tucked into his poncho, and he walks into this kind of dingy little hostel, hasn't even said a word yet, and bam, the barmaid looks right at him and goes, "Buenas noches, mister."
Wow.
Makes you think, what does it really take to actually connect with someone from a completely different world?
Oh, totally. And that's exactly what we're going to get into today. We're doing a deep dive on William D. Rayburn's identification in the missionary task.
Okay.
Now, before you think, oh, this isn't for me, I don't care about missionaries, this book, it's not just about that. It's really about something we all deal with. How do you actually understand and connect with people from different backgrounds? It's like a crash course in cross-cultural engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it doesn't matter if you're traveling the world, if you're working with people from different countries, or even just trying to understand someone from a different part of town.
Yeah.
Rayburn's experiences, I think, have a lot to teach us. And we're going to break down this whole idea of identification, what it really means, why it's so important, why it sometimes just doesn't work, and some of the really surprising things it tells us about how humans connect.
And the cool thing is, Rayburn's book is full of amazing stories. So we're going to be looking closely at his time in Ecuador, where he really went deep hanging out with Quichua Indians and the Cholos, the people with mixed indigenous and Spanish heritage. And then we're going to travel with him to a Bulu village in Cameroon. And by looking at these two really different experiences, some pretty huge themes emerge, like the power of our habits that we don't even realize we have. The fact that you can't just fake your way into really understanding someone. And the deep symbolic meaning that's hidden in everyday stuff like food and even the idea of ownership.
Okay, let's start with the Ecuador experience then, this whole Meester situation.
Yeah.
So Reyburn arrives in Banos. It's pouring rain, and he's with his Quechua companion, Carlos Bawa. Now, he has put a lot of thought into his outfit.
Right.
He's got the humble cholo hat, the patched up pants, the whole 9 yards, even down to those alpargatas, the sandals made from tire rubber.
Yeah.
He's going for invisibility, basically, just another face in the crowd.
Yeah, and then bam, that barmaid hits him with the meester. And what's interesting to think about is that he hadn't even spoken a word, right?
Yeah.
It shows you right away that there are things besides language that tell people where you're from.
That's so true. And then he talks to Carlos, who's this older Quechua man from Lake Colta, and asks him, "How did she know I was a maester?" And to make things even more frustrating, Carlos keeps calling him patroncito, which is basically like little boss or sir.
Oh, no.
And Reyburn knows that if Carlos keeps doing that, it's going to blow his cover completely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can feel his frustration, right? He put so much effort into looking the part, but he's still being seen as an outsider. He feels like his perfect disguise is totally backfired.
Yeah, it's like, what else can you do, right?
Right. But this is where things get really interesting. The next morning, he goes straight to the innkeeper and asks her, "How did you know?" And her answer is, it wasn't his clothes. It wasn't his accent, because, again, he hadn't said anything.
Right.
She says to him, and this is key, "It's the way you walk."
Wow, I never would have thought of that.
Me neither. What's so fascinating is that it was totally unconscious. She couldn't pinpoint it at first, but then she asked him to walk again. And that's when it clicked for her.
Oh, I see.
She pointed out that Europeans, when they walk, they swing their arms pretty freely. Like they've never had to carry anything on their backs. And the locals, they take these short, choppy steps, leaning forward a bit, their arms barely moving, usually tucked under their ponchos.
Interesting. So it's this little detail, but it says so much about how deeply rooted these cultural movements are. We don't even think about them.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, right? Can you really blend in if your most basic physical habits give you away? It seems like outward imitation only gets you so far.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what happens next?
Well, Reyburn decides to try again. This time he's near Tabacundo, and he takes this whole identification thing to a whole new level. He's living in a mud hut, wearing only indigenous clothing, eating only the local food. He basically owns nothing. He's going all in on this cultural immersion.
He's really committed.
He is.
Yeah.
But even with all that, the local men, they still call him patroncito. And when he asks them why, they point to his leather shoes.
What are those shoes?
Yeah, so he ditches them and gets some alpargatas, the local sandals. But even that doesn't change anything.
Really? So what was it then?
They told him it was because he still hung out with the Spanish townspeople. So he tries to avoid them, but that patroncito label, it just sticks to him.
It's like it's part of him now.
Right. And then there's this really crucial moment. He's been working side by side with these people for 2 months, repairing a road. His hands are all calloused, just like theirs.
Wow.
And he finally asks one of the community leaders, Vicente Cusco, why do you still call me patroncito?
What did he say?
And Vicente's answer, it cuts right to the heart of the matter. He says, we call you patroncito because you weren't born of an Indian mother.
Wow. That's a pretty big obstacle. I mean, you can't change where you came from.
It really shows you that there are limits to how much you can identify with a culture when your origins are different. It's not just about what you do or how you look. It's something much deeper.
Yeah, that makes sense. So outward identification, it can help build bridges, but it can't erase those fundamental differences.
Exactly. So we've seen how tough it was for Reyburn in Ecuador. Now let's switch gears and talk about his experiences in Africa in this Bulu village called Alum in Cameroon. It sounds like he had a much warmer welcome there.
Yeah, it was like they embraced him almost immediately. He and his wife were given Bulu family names. The village threw these dances in their honor. They got gifts. It was a much smoother start.
That's interesting. And Reyburn talks about how he adapted to this Bulu idea of collective ownership. Since the villagers didn't have a ton of possessions, it wasn't that hard for him and his wife to share what they had.
I see. So because they were all on a similar level materially, it made it easier to fit in. But then there's that story about Argun, which really changes Reyburn's understanding of what belonging and ownership mean in this new context.
Right. Tell me more about that.
So this stranger shows up, and it turns out he's the chief's nephew. And there's this big gathering of elders in the men's clubhouse. The chief is boasting out his nephew, saying how good of an elephant hunter he is.
Okay.
And then, get this, the chief looks at Reyburn, calls him by his Bulu name, Obamina, and says, "We are going to present our gun to my nephew now. Go get it."
Our gun. Not his gun. Our gun. That must have been a crazy moment for Reyburn. This was his own personal rifle, something he owned.
Oh, yeah. And right then he realizes that being Obamina, it meant letting go of that individualistic Western idea of ownership. It was about belonging to the community where everything was shared. He talks about giving up that stingy idea of private ownership. It really shows you how much our understanding of something like ownership is shaped by our culture.
Yeah, makes you wonder what other assumptions we have that we don't even realize. And Reyburn also digs into the meaning of food, especially during his time in the Kaka village. He chose to eat only cassava, like the locals did.
Wow, all cassava.
Yeah, and he actually did fine. He stayed healthy, didn't lose any weight. It was a deliberate choice to really live like they did.
So it was another way for him to identify with them. And then there's that amazing story about the old man who offers him caterpillars.
Oh, yeah. He had just been talking with some younger guys about Peter's vision in Acts, where Peter sees all these animals and is told to eat them.
Right.
And Reyburn was saying that Missionary should be willing to eat whatever the locals eat.
So this was like putting his money where his mouth is.
Exactly. And then out of nowhere, this old man offers him these caterpillars.
Whoa, what did he do?
Well, the old man presented them on these nice, clean, white enamel plates, clearly trying to be respectful. And Reyburn is obviously grossed out, but he gets the deeper meaning of this moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. So he ate them.
He did.
He ate the caterpillars.
What did people think? Well, the village women, they started whispering amongst themselves, saying, "White man Kaka is eating caterpillars. He really has a black heart."
A black heart, what does that mean?
For them, it meant that he truly accepted them, that he was connecting with them on a deeper level. By eating something so strange and honestly probably disgusting to him, he showed them that he was one of them.
That's powerful. And Reyburn ends that story with this killer line. "An emptied pan of caterpillars is more convincing than all the empty metaphors of love which missionaries are prone to expend on the heathen."
So true. It's all about actions, right? Especially those actions that make you uncomfortable and force you to step outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. It shows you that identification isn't just about appearances or doing the same things. It's a way to achieve real communication and understanding. He talks about this German term, der Anknüpfungspunkt, which means the point of contact. It means you have to figure out what already makes sense to someone, what they can connect with. It's like their heart isn't empty. It's already full of ideas and experiences.
Yeah, that makes sense. And he also talks about how identification has its limits. Like we saw in Ecuador, outward imitation can only take you so far. Things like where you were born, those differences can't be erased.
Right. So we learn from these stories that even little things like how we walk can say a lot about our culture. And everyday stuff like food and even how we think about ownership, they all have these deep meanings that we might not even realize.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for our listeners?
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to this. If you want to connect with people from different backgrounds, you have to be willing to challenge your own assumptions and the way you see things. It's what Reyburn calls a sacrifice of re-examining one's own cultural assumptions.
And he warns about the dangers of staying in your own bubble. He calls it ideological insulation. If you want to understand the world and connect with people who see things differently, you have to get out there and engage with them.
Okay, so to sum it all up, Reyburn experiences in Ecuador and Africa, they show us that understanding and connecting with people from different cultures is complicated. It's not just about wearing their clothes or speaking their language. It's about understanding those deep cultural differences. Some we can see and some we can't. And it's about being willing to step outside our comfort zone.
Totally. And the story of the Mister, the Petroncito, the Argun, and even those caterpillars, they all show us different parts of this process.
Exactly. And it leaves us with something to think about. What are those things in our own lives, those subtle cultural cues or actions that could either divide us or bring us closer together? What are our unconscious walks and our caterpillars?
Yeah. How can we use these ideas about identification, even though it's complex, to really connect with people in our daily lives?
It's an ongoing journey, right? This search for understanding. And like Rayburn showed us, sometimes the most powerful connections happen in those unexpected, maybe even awkward moments when we're open to trying something new and really seeing the world through someone else's eyes.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely. This was a good one.